What if I told you that you could begin to alleviate your depression and your anxiety by understanding the truth about what time is and how and why we experience it? I have another video that I did on all the dimensions, where time sits in the dimensions, what the whole of reality is, and I'll link that video here. But in this video, I'm going to focus on talking to you about two phrases that you can use once you understand what time really is to bring you out of depression and bring you out of anxiety. So I want you to imagine that the whole of reality is a sphere, right? Where the first dimension is at the center, and then each dimension builds on top of the one before it until you get the entire sphere of reality, let's say out to the 10th dimension. Kind of reminds you of the sun and the planets, right? You exist in all those dimensions. So if we go back to grade school algebra and we think about when we first learned about the third dimension, how we drew the x-axis, which was the first dimension, the y-axis, which was the second dimension, and then that little arrow that we drew and we had to imagine kind of went into the paper, created that room for the third dimension, and then we drew the little cube. I don't know if you guys remember that, but if you think about that concept, that cube existed in all three dimensions, right? Nothing exists just in one dimension. The dimensions just build on each other so that we can create or perceive things a certain way. Time sits on the fourth dimension. So think of it like an everlasting gobstopper, if you want to imagine layers in this sphere. Well, time is right on the inside. It's that fourth dimensional concept that just allows us to perceive things as having a past and a future. But the truth is, all we're ever experiencing is the present moment. Our consciousness is traveling through the everlasting gobstopper, just perceiving the whole of reality, which already exists at different points on different infinite timelines in different dimensions. So what we're experiencing when we're perceiving things as passing in time is our consciousness moving along an already existing timeline. With that in mind, if all we're ever experiencing is what our consciousness, where our consciousness is choosing to perceive things in the everlasting gobstopper, in the whole of reality, then the past and future are illusions. And that is what people mean when they say time is an illusion. Time is not an illusion. Time is part of that construct at the fourth dimensional level that allows us to have a certain experience. But the past and future are always illusions. Scientists even discovered, and I think this was almost a decade ago that I found out about this, so it was probably discovered way before. But scientists discovered that every time we access a memory, every time we think we're remembering something, we're actually reconstructing it. Our mind is reconstructing it every single time. And that's why, for example, if you have stories that are passed down through generations, the details can change slightly. I have an example of that in my family where we were always told that my great grandfather was an Irishman and that he was married to an Indian woman. But my brother went and took an ancestry test. I can't remember which company he used, but he found out that we're actually Scottish. And so somewhere along the line, somebody recreated that memory. Somebody changed a small detail, and it created for me, for the first 41 years of my life, this idea that I was part Irish. So every time we access a memory, we're rebuilding it. That's why it's called remembering. You're re-putting together the story. And then every time we think about the future, we're just imagining something, right? It's not here with us. We are only in this present moment. Well, depression is a way that we reconstruct our images or our memories, remembering of the past as something negative. And anxiety is when we project something negative into the future that has not happened. That's all it is. How do we change that, right? How do we keep ourselves? Because a lot of times, and I talk about this in my other videos, when we have an idea about how something happened, we assign meaning to it. That's really all our soul does, is travel through this construct, this infinite, this reality of infinite possibilities, and we put together ideas, we put together meaning, and that is the whole purpose of a soul's journey, right? And the meanings that we assign to things kind of construct our experience. They construct our ego self. And I could do a whole video on ego, but the ego is not a bad thing. The ego is what allows us to feel separate, to feel that separateness that's required to have this earthly experience. And separateness is not necessarily a bad thing. Again, all of these things I'm saying are examples of how we assign meaning to things where there is no meaning. It just is. So the ideas that we have about the past and the ideas we have about the future construct this kind of shell that creates who we are in the present moment. What do I mean by that? Let me think of an example. Let's say you had a relationship and you really loved your partner. I use relationships a lot because they're meaningful, like they're really impactful in our lives. I use it a lot in my videos, but let's say that you had a really meaningful relationship to you and it didn't work out. You ended up ending the relationship, or let's say even, that person died or somehow that relationship ended. You can say to yourself, depending on the situation, that was horrible. Maybe I was lied to, I was manipulated. Whatever experience that you had, you can assign meaning to that says, woe is you. You deserved something else. And you are, somehow not enough. And that's why that person treated you that way. You can assign all kinds of meaning to that. Or you can say to yourself, I needed that experience at that point in time to awaken to something within me. I was able to awaken to that and able to address it and evolve. So same situation, different perspectives. The first perspective causes you to feel bad, causes you to feel like something should have been different. Second perspective allows you to use the experience for your soul's growth and think to yourself that you're in a better position now. So same situation, depending on perspective, you can either be really depressed. We call it trauma, where we're holding on to trauma. But what we're really holding on to is the meaning that we assigned to the thing that happened to us. And every time we access that memory, every time we project that memory out, we are taking that meaning and we are taking it in as truth. And on the flip side, whenever we project forward, let's use that same example. I was hurt, I was lied to, I was cheated on. I'm always hurt, I'm always lied to, I'm always cheated on. And because I've had those experiences in the future, I'm going to keep having those same experiences. And you can give whatever reason you want for that. Well, all men are this, or all women are this, or whatever. And so you have anxiety about future relationships. Or you can say, I had that past experience. I grew from it. Now I can be confident that the next relationship I enter into is going to be a million times better. Same situations, different perspectives. Neither of them exist right now. So that past relationship doesn't exist in the present. That future relationship doesn't exist in the present. All that exists in the present is the meaning that I've assigned to both my past and my future. They literally construct my personality. My daughter is texting me like she always does. She kind of harasses me a little bit. I bet her that she couldn't finish cleaning the kitchen in 15 minutes because normally when I send her down there, she takes an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. She's playing music. She's distracted. And so I challenged her today to clean the kitchen in a reasonable amount of time. It takes me like 5 minutes. And so she just texted me that she finished in 10 minutes and not the 15 minutes I challenged her to. So I owe her $5. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. My ideas about my past and my future hold my ego together. They actually are the framework that creates my current experience and my current personality. And so the way to use this to overcome any depression or anxiety is to first realize that the depression you're feeling is because of meaning that you've assigned to things that have happened in your past. Examine what's making you sad. Challenge that reality or what you perceive as reality. So the ego, we see it as a bad thing, but it's really the only thing that allows me to be Samara in this particular lifetime. It's necessary. It literally is what creates this particular soul experience for me. So if I have beliefs about my past or my future, my subconscious is going to hold on to those for dear life because it's constructing or holding together myself in this moment. So sometimes, because beliefs fight for their lives in order to preserve the ego, we can see them as solid. We can see things as though there's no other way to perceive them. The reality is, going back to what I was talking about what the whole of reality is, there's infinite possibilities, meaning there's infinite ways to perceive something. There's infinite journeys that the soul can go on, and an infinite number of ways that we can look at things. And so when we're looking at our past, we can either say, I'm so sad that, et cetera, or we can say, I'm so grateful that, et cetera, depending on what meaning we choose to assign to it. And same for the future. If we're feeling anxiety, sometimes those beliefs can feel so real. We can say, well, and it's so funny because the confidence that we have in our ability to predict what's going to happen is based on the meaning we've assigned to things in our past. So if we've assigned meaning that, I'm not good enough, all these things happen to me, and that's my evidence that I'm not good enough, instead of saying, all these things happen to me, maybe my soul has a purpose to learn from them and help others, we use that negative meaning we've assigned to say, if I'm not good enough, then in my future, I'm not going to have access to the types of relationships or experiences that I want. So we use illusions to prop up illusions when we have the power. And this is scary. It feels scary because it feels like a life or death situation when we challenge certain beliefs. It feels like we're going to put ourselves in danger because that ego construct is so strong, which is good. Because once you change it, once you change the meaning and that belief becomes solid, you can change the meaning for what is coming your way as well. And that will become solid. And if it's what you want, you can make it strong so that those new positive beliefs fight for their lives. But it's just so funny that we use the past, which is not currently happening, which we're reconstructing every time we decide to access something, a memory. Really, we're just going in our imagination and reconstructing it. We use that to justify how we view what's coming in the future, and neither of them are happening. The only thing that is happening, literally, is what you're perceiving in the present moment. And so that's why mindfulness is so important. Sometimes we can get so caught up in those illusions, and we can get wound up in this cycle of negative feelings and anxiety, and we can't see our way out because we've forgotten that we always have this moment to come to. So let's say I'm spinning out because I feel like I've got so much on my plate. I'm just all over the place. All I ever have to do is remember what I'm talking to you guys about and come back to the present. What's happening right now? I'm sitting in a comfortable chair in my bedroom. I'm now breathing deeply. I'm perfectly safe. I'm not in any immediate danger. My stomach is full. My room smells really good. All of those things are all that are existing in this present moment. And as I'm speaking to you, I'm also connected to the parts of myself that exist in the higher dimensions, and I'm allowing information to flow through me. That is literally all that's happening right now. Anything else I'm thinking about, I'm imagining and assigning meaning to, and therefore causing my own reaction to the thing. Since I've learned this concept, it's so funny to me anytime I hear anybody say, you made me feel like. No, the meaning you assigned made you feel like. Anything we feel is a result of the meaning that we're assigning to something. Now, that doesn't negate actual physical pain, right? Or even the emotion that we feel in any given moment. From my perspective, and based on this whole construct that I'm explaining to you, emotions in the moment are just signals, just like pain. So let's say I suddenly feel a burning sensation on my finger. Let's say there was a hot stove right here. That burning sensation is not some, life sentence. It's just a signal to tell me to take my hand off the stove. So if I'm feeling an emotion in the moment and I let that emotion come up and it's either depression or anxiety, now you know depression is about the past, anxiety is about the future. It's a signal. If it's depression, it's a signal triggering me to look over at what it is that I'm constructing in my imagination about my past, what meaning I'm assigning to things. And I can examine that and change that. And if I'm feeling anxiety, that's just a signal to get me to look and see what I'm projecting onto my future, what meaning I'm assigning, what I'm so sure is coming my way that's not here yet, and just begin to chip away at that a little bit. To remember that there's an infinite number of ways to perceive something and there are infinite possibilities. You can even, there's a lot of people on YouTube that talk about revision, which is deciding to just create a brand new past, right? So, for example, there's people who have had pets die and they just decide that the pet never died. And then someone shows up at their door with an identical pet to the one that they had. And this is just an example of how strong those meanings, images that you create around your past and your future are, and how much they influence your present moment. But you have control over them. Even the beliefs that seem the most solid, the most logical, people like to talk a lot about logic as though it should be the governing sense. I call it a sense that we have because none of us actually knows objective truth. Even if you're a scientist, scientists are discovering new things every day. So what we call logic is just our best attempt at, kind of organizing information in our minds. And I believe that the only truth that we have is the truth that's in front of us in this moment. Like if I'm interacting with you and we're having an exchange, that's what is true. Because almost anything can be re-examined and a brand new set of meanings, a brand new perspective can be attributed to it. So we are powerful. We are powerful enough. We are designed in a way that if we understand who we truly are, who we fully are, and what this experience is and what we're doing here, we have a lot of influence over how we're perceiving our past and how we're perceiving our future. None of it is actually solid. And at this point in my spiritual journey, I'm doing stuff like jumping timelines. Like I've been talking to my kids all day about the fact that I noticed that I jumped into a new timeline because my consciousness can handle that. I realize that this ego, this version or this experience that my soul has decided to undertake is so fluid. And sometimes that tips people into like a psychosis. So there's that extreme. A lot of us are so caught up in the meaning we're assigning to the past and the future that our burden is depression and anxiety, but other people become so disconnected from that structure that's holding them together that they enter into a psychosis and they can no longer inhabit this experience a certain way. I believe there's purpose to that as well. But the point of this video is just to allow you the awareness that you do have control over feelings of depression and feelings of anxiety. I know a lot of people who have dealt with this and who have been medicated and seen results will probably comment, I'm not disregarding chemical imbalances at all. And if you realize, like if you try these techniques and they're not helping and you talk to a doctor and you try medication and it works for you, hallelujah. But a lot of us, including myself, like I've been in some deep depressions and I've never been on depression medication and I've been able to come out of all of that. I've never really dealt with too much anxiety. It's just not my temperament. But I've been able to bring myself up out of dark nights of the soul just by remembering some of these concepts that I'm telling you guys right now. So this is meant to help those of you who are open to the information and willing to try it out to see if it works. And even if you are being treated, some things actually are hard to reframe. I will say that. Like a lot of stuff that's happening in our world right now, I put a lot of energy, I've had to put a lot of energy into reframing some of those things in order to just feel better about my experience. And I will admit it's taken a lot of effort to do that. So I'm not saying it's always easy peasy. I'm saying it's possible. And as a result of me practicing what I'm telling you guys, I've been able to experience incredible timelines during periods of great difficulty in our country and in our world. Certain things, and I acknowledge that a lot of people have gone through a lot of difficult things, but understanding the nature of reality can help you be on a higher timeline while witnessing some of these things happen across the world. I struggle with sharing this kind of information because I feel like sometimes it comes across as tone deaf, like not having empathy for other people, but it's more trying to empower people as much as I can. Not all of us are meant to understand this information. Not all of us are meant to decode, what it means to be in this experience and create new timelines and timeline jump. But some of us are, and that's who this message is for. So comment below if you've had experience improving your depression or anxiety by reframing your perceptions and the meaning that you assign to your past and future in your imagination.